Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into literally the most fascinating machine in the known universe, you, or more specifically, your brain. We're not looking at it as some static, unchangeable organ, but as biological hardware. Hardware that we can actively upgrade, reprogram, and optimize throughout our entire lives.
So I want to start off by throwing a pretty wild question your way. Can your thoughts, things that are entirely abstract and completely weightless, can they physically reshape the biological structure of your brain? Well, for centuries, scientists thought the adult brain was basically a finished product, totally set in stone after childhood. But as we're going to see today, modern neuroscience has completely flipped that idea on its head. Your abstract thoughts and your physical biology, they're actually engaged in this profound, continuous dialogue.
Here's our quick user manual for today. First, we'll define the mind and brain. 2, we'll unpack the pillars of neuroplasticity. 3, look at the power of mindfulness. 4, define cognitive reserve. And finally, 5, we'll talk about building your brain's buffer.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, Mind and Brain Defined, Hardware versus Software.
To really get this, we need to draw a clear line between the physical and the theoretical. As highlighted by medical literature from Gyps Hospital and educational sources, your brain is your physical hardware. It has a definite shape, it's tangible, you can actually touch it. It's made up of billions of physical nerve cells, blood vessels, and interconnected neurons. Now the mind, on the other hand, is the intangible software. This is your consciousness, your thoughts, your perceptions, and your feelings. It's not made of cells, and you definitely can't touch it. The grand debate in science has always been, how do these two actually interact? Today we know the mind is essentially the manifestation of the brain's activity. But here is the truly mind-blowing part. The software of the mind can literally write structural changes back onto the hardware of the brain.
Which brings us to Section 2, the pillars of neuroplasticity, rewiring the brain.
This incredible process is what we call neuroplasticity. A comprehensive scientific review defined it perfectly. It's the nervous system's capacity to alter its structure, function, and connectivity in response to intrinsic and extrinsic stimuli. What does that mean in plain English? It means your adult brain is not some fixed circuit board. Not at all. It is a continuously renegotiated wiring diagram. Every single experience you have, every skill you practice, even the environments you hang out in, they all act as a stimulus that rewires that diagram.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how deeply integrated this whole process really is. Looking at this biological roadmap, down at the very bottom, you've got the molecular level, things like calcium signaling and specific brain proteins. Now, these tiny molecules influence the permissive tissue environment above them, which then drives actual physical changes in the brain's architecture. And all of that ultimately outputs the behavioral and clinical changes we experience in our daily lives, like finally learning a new language or recovering from an injury. It's all connected.
Breaking that roadmap down a bit further, we see that neuroplasticity relies on 4 main pillars. First up is synaptic plasticity. This is how the strength of connections between neurons changes, and it's literally the cellular basis of your memory. Second, we have structural plasticity, which is the actual physical remodeling of the brain. Think of dendrites growing new branches or old unused synapses getting pruned away. Third is neurogenesis. This is the literal birth of brand new neurons, especially in the hippocampus, which happens well into adulthood. And fourth is functional reorganization, where entire networks shift around. Say if one part of the brain is damaged by a stroke, another perfectly healthy part might physically rewire itself to take over that lost job.
But here is a really crucial point we have to keep in mind. Neuroplasticity is completely directionally neutral. It's just a mechanism of adaptation. It doesn't inherently know good from bad. Adaptive plasticity gives us awesome things like skill learning, memory consolidation, and recovery from trauma. But those exact same biological rules can actually work against us. We call that maladaptive plasticity. The very same activity-dependent rules that lock in a great golf swing can also lock in a state of chronic pain. The same reward circuit potentiation that helps us crush a difficult goal, it can also entrench a compulsive drug addiction. Your brain is always adapting. The real question is, what are you training it to adapt to?
Let's look at a real-world example of this in Section 3, the power of mindfulness, software to hardware.
There's this landmark study reported by Harvard Health that is just fascinating. Researchers took a group of people who had literally never meditated before and put them through an 8-week mindfulness program. The ask was simple. Practice just 30 minutes of daily mindfulness meditation, just paying attention to the present moment without judging it. When researchers took MRI scans before and after those 8 weeks, the results were absolutely astounding. These participants actually grew the gray matter in their hippocampus. That's the area associated with learning, memory, and emotional regulation. And at the exact same time, they saw a distinct decrease in gray matter in the amygdala, which is basically the brain's stress, anxiety, and fear center.
The Harvard researchers summarized this perfectly. They pointed out that just as learning to physically juggle changes the brain's motor areas, their study proves that learning to think in a new way can change the brain. Just let that sink in for a second. By simply directing their attention and practicing a mental habit, these people carved literal, physical pathways right into their biology. It's almost like a superpower.
So how does this protect us long term? Let's move to Section 4, what is cognitive reserve? The brain's buffer.
To really explain this, we need to look back at a pretty wild medical mystery. Back in the 1980s, scientists were doing autopsies and they were completely stumped. They were looking at the brains of people who had died from other causes, and they found severe physical signs of Alzheimer's disease, heavy plaques and tangles. But here's the crazy part. When these people were alive, they had absolutely zero history of memory issues. None. They were sharp as a tack and functionally perfect. So how on earth is it possible to have a brain that is physically ravaged by Alzheimer's, but a mind that remains completely intact?
Well, the answer to that mystery is something called cognitive reserve. The Human Performance Resources by Champ defines cognitive reserve as the brain's resilience and its capacity to sustain function despite damage. See, because these individuals had actively challenged their brains throughout their entire lives, they'd built up this incredibly efficient, adaptable, and robust reserve network of alternative neural pathways. They literally built a bypass. When one pathway got blocked by the disease, their brains just effortlessly rerouted the signal through a backup pathway they had spent decades building.
Let's move to our final section and see how to actually build this ourselves. Section 5. Building your brain's buffer. Constructing reserve.
Building up this buffer really just comes down to knowing what we can and cannot control. Obviously, there are non-modifiable factors, things like your biological sex, your genetics, your age, early life events. You can't change those, so honestly, there's no use stressing over them. But take a look at the modifiable factors. These are completely in your hands. We're talking about exercise, diet, sleep, and social engagement. These are the levers you can pull every single day to prompt that neuroplasticity and build up your own cognitive reserve.
Health guidelines actually give us a highly specific user manual for optimizing our hardware. First off, getting 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep, especially deep sleep, is totally non-negotiable for consolidating memories and clearing out brain toxins. Second, eating a Mediterranean diet. Loading up on polyphenols, omega-3s from fish, and olive oil gives your body the literal structural building blocks for healthy neurons. Third, getting 45 to 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise a week. This releases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which acts like miracle-grow fertilizer for your neural connections. And finally, engaging in mentally demanding hobbies, whether that's learning a new language or volunteering socially in your community, forces your brain to constantly build new, heavy-duty networks.
So the science is crystal clear here. Your brain is never just static. It's this living, breathing landscape that is continuously shaped by what you do, what you eat, and exactly how you think. Neuroplasticity is happening in your head right this second, whether you're intentionally directing it or not. So, I want to leave you with this one provocative thought to carry with you. If your everyday habits, actions, and thoughts are actively rewiring your brain, what kind of brain are you building today?